Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
I never thought my life would turn out like this. I always imagined a happy marriage with my husband, complete with love and understanding. But things took a dark turn when he started going on work trips. At first, I just missed him and wanted him to keep in touch. But when I asked him to, he made me feel crazy. He said I was overreacting and being too clingy. I couldn't understand why he couldn't just call or text me every now and then. I wasn't asking him to call me every hour, so I didn't see any reason why that would be a problem. But then I overheard a conversation between him and his mother. They were talking about how I was too needy and how my constant need for attention was causing a strain on their relationship. I felt like my heart was breaking. I couldn't believe that the two people I loved and respected saw me in such a negative light. She told him that he needed to cut the cord with me and focus on his work. She said I was holding him back and that I needed to learn my place. I felt like I had been kicked in the gut. How could my own mother in law treat me like this? And how could my husband just go along with it? I was hurt and angry, but I didn't want to let them win. It dawned on me that this was the reason my husband started to act strangely towards me. He was no longer loving and caring. He didn't notice when I would do little things to make him happy, things that he would have immediately noticed before. Most times, I felt like I was married to myself, and it made no difference when he was away for work and when he was around. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I waited 4 long months for him to go on his next work trip, and when he did, I turned his life upside down. I started by reaching out to his colleagues and building connections with them. I made sure they knew that I was a strong, independent woman who didn't need my husband's constant attention. I also started working on my own personal and professional goals, proving to my mother in law and husband that I was more than just a needy wife. In the process, I met someone new and we started dating. At first, it was just to spite him and his mother, but then something unexpected happened. I fell in love with this new person. I had never felt this way before, and it was a completely new experience for me. He treated me very differently from my husband. He was attentive to me and only cared for my happiness. He also supported my career goals and was ready to go all out for me. I didn't know how to handle it. My heart was torn between my new lover and my husband. But my husband's betrayal had broken me, and I couldn't turn back now. I was determined to make him pay for what he had done to me. And so I continued to see this other man even when my husband came back home. I know what I did was wrong, but I couldn't help it. I had never felt so alive. And as for my husband, well, let's just say he finally got a taste of his own medicine. It was like I had settled by picking my husband that so many times I wished I met my lover first. But I also knew that I had to make a decision soon, as I was in a dilemma now, and I couldn't keep on hurting someone else who loves me. As the days went by, my new relationship became more and more serious. I was happy and in love for the first time in a long time. But I knew that my actions would have consequences. I didn't want to hurt my husband, but I couldn't help the way I felt. Still trying to make a decision on my next trip, my husband found out I was cheating on him. One day, my husband came home early from his work trip. I was in the middle of a conversation with my new lover, and he walked in on us. The look on his face was one of shock and betrayal. He was furious and started to yell at me. I tried to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, but he didn't want to hear it. He demanded that I end things with my new lover and begged me to work on our marriage. But I couldn't. If he had told me that months ago, I would have done a backflip in my head. I waited so long for him to see me, for him to love me again and have what we had before we got married, but things had changed. I was in love with this other man, and I couldn't just turn off my feelings for him. My husband was devastated, and he left me. He took everything, including our home. He paid for it, so it was technically his, and our shared friends. I was left with nothing but my new lover. I had lost everything, but I knew that I had gained something more important. I was in love with this new person, and I couldn't let him go. I knew that my actions would have consequences, but I was willing to take that risk. I was willing to lose everything for the chance to be happy. My husband was furious and he tried to get revenge. He would call me and text me nonstop, trying to convince me to come back to him, but I couldn't. My heart belonged to somebody else. But my husband wasn't going to let me go that easily. He started to stalk me, calling and texting me nonstop. He would show up at my work and my home. He would show up at my work and my home, trying to convince me to come back to him. He even threatened my new lover, telling him to stay away from me. I was scared for my safety and the safety of my new lover. I didn't know what my husband was capable of, and I didn't want to find out. I knew that I had to take action to protect myself and the person I love. I decided to take my husband to court for harassment and stalking. It was a long and difficult process, but I finally got a restraining order. I filed for divorce, but he was unwilling to sign it. Luckily for me, I got a good divorce lawyer who took on the case and would help finalize my divorce whether my husband likes it or not. My only regret is putting my kids in the middle of this, which is why I decided not to fight for full custody. Because my husband is a great dad most of the time, and I don't want to deprive my kids of their dad just because he and I have problems. It's been months now, and I finally got through with a divorce. I feel free and able to put my life together. My husband didn't take it well at all. He still has the restraining order against him, so he personally couldn't do much. His mom, however, was a pain. She kept constantly trying to reach me. Once we happened to be in the same place, and she behaved shamelessly, saying I destroyed her son's life and she wished she stopped us from getting married and that I was the worst thing to have ever happened to their family. I responded to her saying that now I was gone, so she was free to marry her son. She was the one who poisoned his mind and made him think I was being clingy to the point that he neglected me for years in our marriage. I thanked her for doing that because it helped me see that I wasn't the problem, because I found someone who was there for me and loved all of my clingy self. The issue in my family had become the hot trending gossip for those in our world, but I couldn't care less. People always have something to say, even when they have no idea what really happened. Some give you fake smiles and empathy, some are just there for the gist, and there are some that are actually genuine. But I didn't have time to sift through all that nonsense, so I just preferred not to talk to anyone about it. Until our mutual friend, who is actually a great friend of mine, called me and asked what really happened. I knew she was coming from a good place, so I told her everything. She told me that she was sorry our marriage didn't work and that my husband neglected me. She also said something very striking, that the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know, and that she wishes me the best and hopes that I made the right choice. My heart was racing and various thoughts came to mind. What if this and what if that? But I shut it down immediately. The deed had already been done, and my life with my ex husband was now a closed chapter. YTA. Cheating is never the answer to anything. You didn't even confront your husband about it, and you just decided to put matters in your hands. I don't think your husband did anything wrong. The matter could have been solved quickly, and both of you set boundaries for your mother in law. Instead, you went as far as getting a lover and divorcing him. Did you think properly about what this means for your kids? Or you just cared about meeting your selfish needs and desires? I really doubt that you truly loved your husband, and I hope you don't move on to the next shiny thing when the going gets tough with your new relationship. Marriage is hard, and you need to learn to stick it out because things would happen. How I see it, you were just being a coward. YTA. Firstly, you eavesdropped on a conversation, made your conclusions, and took actions based on your independent conclusion. This formed the basis for having a lover? Not a very good example for your kids. NTA. It's clear that it wasn't just that she heard the conversation with her husband and mother in law. It was a symptom of a bigger problem, which was neglect. If she wasn't happy in her marriage, I see no reason why she should stay, no matter if the said individual is hurt. If he really cared, he should have listened to his wife and shut his mother up. This year, we're spending Thanksgiving with my in laws. My wife really doesn't like to cook, so in our marriage, I do most of the cooking. So when her parents announced a month ago that their Thanksgiving will be a potluck, I knew I was in for the cooking duty. My wife spoke with her family, then told me that we'll be bringing the turkey. I'm okay with it, and I asked how many people are coming so I'll know how much to cook. After some discussions, I found out that there will be about 30 people, but not everyone liked turkeys, so we settled on me cooking 2 turkeys. Other people will bring other meaty dishes. I bought the turkeys and ingredients and made preparations to cook the turkeys tomorrow morning in time for dinner. 10 minutes ago, her parents called and said some people said they can't cook their promised dishes and if I could cook more. She gave me a list: pot roast, potato dish, my famous stir fried green beans, a cake. I looked at the list, looked at her, looked at the list again, and said no. At this point, they're basically asking me to cook an entire meal. I asked if they're short on dishes because people are not coming. She answered that people are still coming, but life came up and they couldn't cook. I asked what came up, but she doesn't know. I told her if they're coming, they can buy restaurant dishes to bring. She said I have all day to prepare and I'm cooking tomorrow anyway. I refused, and before we could argue, I left and am sitting at the coffee shop writing this. AITA, thank you all for your responses. I went to have lunch by myself to think things over and decided this is not the hill I want to die on. I compromised with my wife, so I'll be making the turkeys as promised along with the pot roast. My wife and her mom will be going to Costco today to buy frozen side dishes and several of their tiramisus. Her parents are older and not very mobile, so I cut them a lot of slack. To answer some questions, we have a double full-size oven and I'll be making the pot roast in the Instant Pot. We'll be paying for the additional items, including the Costco things. Her parents are living on a strict budget, and I'm not super familiar with her siblings' financials, but I know we're better off. Thanksgiving is not the time I want to pick this fight. My stir fried green beans recipe is easy. A. Prep them, then dry them. B. Microwave them in an uncovered bowl for 1 minute on high C. Heat up the pan on high heat and lightly oil it. D. Prepare seasoning, salt, pepper, as much garlic as you like, soy sauce, and sesame oil. E. Once the pan is hot, toss in the green beans to lightly sear it, but not cook. F. Add garlic, don't add too early or they'll burn. G. Add seasoning to coat and to taste. Your suggestion for them to buy from restaurants and bring was a good one, or they can figure it out. The life came up bit and them saying you have all day to cook, so might as well pick up the slack, makes it seem like your time is less important. I'd feel taken for granted there, and especially from someone who doesn't even like to cook. Unless there are actual emergencies, and even then, your in laws, as the hosts, should be the ones to cover for their guests and not you. Or your wife can get over her dislike of cooking instead of volunteering your services. NTA, not even a little, but your wife is. Her parents, too. NTA, not only are they springing it last minute on you, they're springing on the person who's already doing the main course. Man, that is effing shameless. As you said, I'd go buy side dishes before I even dreamed of asking the person cooking the main course to do my sides as well. It sounds like they didn't plan properly on their end and just want to push off the responsibility on someone they assume will put up with it. Super inconsiderate of them. If you were doing a side casserole and they asked you to do another side or two, okay. But to ask the guy doing two whole ass turkeys on short notice to cater an entire four-course meal with dessert for 30 people the day before Thanksgiving, man, that pisses me off that they even have the audacity to ask. That is so effing rude. I know it's probably not worth causing this much of a stir over, but I'd actually be tempted to tell them to find their own effing turkey and bail on them altogether. Totally NTA. Your family is inconsiderate as hell. Mother in law is currently visiting from the Philippines, which is about a 15-hour flight. She has only come once for our wedding, so we haven't seen her in years and wanted her to meet her grandkids, 5 and 2. I really don't know her at all. My only interaction with her has been at the wedding. She wanted to wear something cultural, but I asked her not to wear white, traditional mother of the groom color in the Philippines. And she told people behind my back that I am a racist bitch and ugly. When confronted, she just cried and said she was blowing off steam and accused me of racism. I've hardly spoken to her in my life, so that was my one impression of her. I know she was super anxious about coming alone, so I tried to be as welcoming as possible. Mother in law came, and I thought things were okay, but then she began receiving all these deliveries of food, and a family member drove an hour to bring her a casserole. I was confused, and when I talked to the family member, she said mother in law's husband had contacted her and claimed she was starving and he was ordering what groceries he could, but any food they could bring her would help. I was even more confused. We have food in the house, and I cook every night. I talked to mother in law. She admitted she had been calling her husband crying because she was hungry. She said I didn't make her breakfast. Didn't know I had to. I eat something quick before work. And didn't tell her she could eat our food or use our kitchen. Again, didn't know I had to. So she just hadn't been eating. I could feel my blood boiling and yelled, "Why wouldn't you just ask?" I said she humiliated me and should have come to me instead of running to her husband like a crybaby. She began sobbing. My husband came in and backed me, and mother in law kept screaming for us to get out. I did, but muttered, "It is our room." All of her stuff is gone now. She must have left through a back door. She ignored our calls, so I sent her a text. But now, family from America and from back in the Philippines are calling us disrespectful a-holes. My husband said he will back me, though he wishes I used a better tone. YTA, what a horrible way to welcome your mother in law. You should have worked with your husband to learn basic ways to make her feel welcome. Instead, you screamed at her, assumed she'd know how to find a way around your life and American culture, and made her feel so bad and sad and hungry that she left. What an awful, ignorant host. I don't exclude your husband here. You both suck. And for anyone saying she should learn how to behave in America or she should go home, that's how the racism and xenophobia we're experiencing started. YTA, your mother in law is basically a stranger to you. She spent days not eating and you didn't even notice? Is this how you normally treat your guests? Like, do you guys not share meals? Also, if anyone comes to my house during the little tour, I say you can help yourself to anything in the house to make yourself food if this is what I expect of them. What exactly have you all done to be hospitable? Bond or spend time with her? Plus, you got your blood boiling because she confided in her husband? She should have come to you, the stranger who did nothing to accommodate her in your home, to complain. You were more concerned with the humiliation than with the fact that a misunderstanding caused this woman to go hungry in your home and ask for help from someone in a different continent because you failed to make her see you as a good host. The initial misunderstanding doesn't make you an AH. Cultural differences can be hard to navigate, but your response to it is. BTW, your husband is worse because it's his mom, and as her son, he should take more of the hosting responsibility. I don't understand why this all falls on you. ESH. ESH. Sorry. When cultures clash. Your mother in law sounds like a traditional Filipino with a culture far removed from yours. You sound like a typical American who thinks the entire world runs or should run according to your way of doing things. How sad that you couldn't sit down and talk things out. My big question is, where was your husband when all this was happening? He should have been translating cultures and helping his mother deal with the incredible culture shock she was dealing with. So sad.